Hello, this is another Sister Circle discussion in our series, and this time Sister Circle is presenting a conversation with the Black Staff Alliance on thriving and healing while Black. This conversation is part of the Community Healing Network's Healing Days, which take place the third weekend of October every year. And it is a time where we ask Black people to set aside time for their healing. More information on healing ideas and other Sister Circle offerings are on our website at www.thewomens'initiative.org and look for the Sister Circle tab. Ladies, can you introduce yourself before we get started?
I'm Juanika Howard, clinician therapist at the Women's Initiative.
Sure, I'm Alyson Stewart, therapist with the Women's Initiative and co-coordinator of Sister Circle.
Hello, I'm Andrea Mayfield, culture, humility, and program manager at the Women's Initiative.
Thank you, and I am Shelly Wood, a therapist at the Women's Initiative and co-coordinator of the Sister Circle program. So why don't we get started? Juanika, I believe you are going to go first.
Yes. Welcome. Thank you guys for taking a moment. So my question, I want to approach the group too. In the wake of so many social injustice acts being brought to the forefront through media outlets, what topic of social justice speaks to your calling? There's so much for that from me.
Yeah, it's a big question.
I'm constantly go to the thought of the youth and how to advocate and support the youth within my community as a way of how to get them to be able to use their voice and feel heard versus marginalized, but also allowing comfort and security in a safe space for them to just express and vent when they need to vent, and feel all those emotions that have arise just from seeing so much in the media, and allowing them to develop that language to use just to express themselves. And so for me, feeding into my community by way of providing that person, that support, that auntie role has been my greatest gift and joy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think about youth a lot as well, Juanika, and I also think about motherhood when I think about just everything on social media, on television screens right now. So much of it is violence against bodies that look like ours. And so one of the things that I've been doing that I believe is really effective is bringing together friends, family, sisters of mine via Zoom, video conferencing to watch some of the videos that were really not safe to watch on their own. We want to stay tuned in. We don't want to turn ourselves away from everything that's happening, but thinking specifically about the video of Brother George Floyd and his killing. For so long, I could not watch it. And so many other women that I talked to said the same, women and men. But also wanting to know, because that awareness is really there when we've had the opportunity to view it. And even for those that aren't ready to view it, creating space to have conversations about it has been really impactful, finding opportunities to bring Black women together. We know that this is really new to some people, but this has been our lives since we've been on planet Earth. Violence against folks who look like us, violence against Black bodies. So working through not only the trauma of the continuation of social injustices and violence, but the reverberative effects of many of our white friends and colleagues just waking up to it. Sort of on the one hand, really grateful to have allies. And on the other hand, it can be incredibly challenging to sort of take in, wow, all this time, this is new for folks. So just finding opportunities just like this to extend conversation.
I think in terms of social justice for me, the one thing that really speaks to me is, and thank you, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, reclaiming our time, but also our space. And I think so many times we've been conditioned to do this, but just thinking about how we take up space or how we have been conditioned to shrink or fall back or get to the back. And so for me, particularly thinking about how I can advocate and let Black people, but really Black women, know that please take up your space. You deserve that space wherever you are. That is your space. You've earned it. And so I'm always very conscious of when I'm walking in a space and there is, another white person, and I find myself wanting to, hurry up and get out of the way and that sort of thing, and think, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be here. I can walk on the sidewalk just as they can walk on the sidewalk. And so I want to just continue to advocate for people like that, especially for my daughter, I think, too, and just making sure that she knows that you deserve to be here just like anybody else. And this is your space, and to reclaim that. And I also think about some of the offerings that we have, like yoga for people of color. Traditionally, those spaces have been very white. And so I just want to advocate that we can have that space too. And it's not like we were never doing those things in history, right? Black and brown people have always done things like that. But we never see it. So we don't know that we're supposed to be doing that. And it's okay for us to do that. And just thinking about the Chihamba and moving your body and what that feels like to have your body taking up space. And that we don't usually see ourselves doing that. And we don't sometimes know what that feels like to move our body in space. And so just that awareness of what that looks like. So reclaiming our time and reclaiming our space is really passionate for me in terms of social justice.
Yeah, I think for me, social justice, my calling, I feel, is just vulnerability as a strength. I noticed a lot of individuals say that if it wasn't for working from home with the virtual model, that they would be expected to go back into work after the killing of an unarmed Black person, and to just kind of code switch and just be able to navigate white spaces all day and just be exhausted. And so I guess for me, I just get really tired that people of color, Black people specifically, have to constantly ask for permission to carry their emotions. And just really, I'm liking how things have been normalized in terms of, hashtag, girl dad, and just tears. And because we don't societally have enough time to grieve, so much happens to us that there's so much turnover that arguably it's the question of, is racial healing possible when there's so much just re-traumatization constantly? And so I think my calling is constantly on social media, or just kind of reposting, just validating and affirming emotion, that it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be in despair, because I just get really tired of kind of gritting our teeth and kind of powering through, fake it till you make it, like just that performative aspect of wearing a mask and just acting as though nothing is going on and that we're just supposed to rise to this occasion. It's just, my calling is it's just okay to not be okay. And that is just something I'm really wanting to honor in my own life. And I think even just my reminders to others is a reminder to me. And so just the justice of being able to, feel our hurt and not have to act like it's not happening, because we're constantly just gaslit by society, honestly. And so just this calling of strength in just feeling rather than having to just brush things over and move on to the next thing. Because it's just, I don't know. I'm alarmed and concerned by how we hold our strength and the lasting impacts that it does on our body.
Yes, and that leads to my second part of that question is, how do we place those boundaries around our passion? Like, Alyson, if you don't mind, what do you do to prevent yourself from feeling that fatigue?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think personally, I've had to really look at my media diet and kind of just cleansing my palate in terms of, I don't need to read everybody's comment section. Like, I think I'm purposeful in just kind of what I just allow my eyes to skim over and what I intentionally want to stop and read or listen to or witness. And so I think just giving myself that space to get to decide, okay, what's happening in my body right now? How's my mind? And how am I going to be in terms of exposure, whether to current events or things that are kind of resurfacing, even to a point that was made around even people naming, wow, I never knew this existed. That is really challenging to know that something for me that feels so overt is something that can be so easily missed. And so I think the boundary that I just set is basically kind of time and information, like what I'm kind of ingesting and what I'm just allowing myself to be around. But I think the biggest thing that's worked for me as of late in this political climate and in a pandemic has been, don't look at the comments. there's nothing there you need to read. So, and just kind of expose myself to things that give me hope. I like having a diverse realm of ideas and perspectives, but sometimes just a like-minded nature within just social justice in terms of people who don't wish me harm, and just familiarizing myself with those voices. There's always going to be a slew of voices that, wish me harm and are talking about a lot of negativity. So being really intentional with seeking out, channels of Black joy has been really helpful for me.
That sounds like some good self-care.
Yes. So I don't know, are we ready to transition into the self-care question? Okay. Because now that we named that, and Juanika's topic beautifully named, I wanted to begin my question with quoting Audre Lorde, activist and feminist, who says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. And so my question for everyone is, what experience typically influence our desire to utilize self-care? And how do we know when self-care is self-care and something that feels nurturing and long-lasting versus something that's gratifying in a temporary sense, maybe overindulging, binge watching, binge eating, overspending? But what influences, what is the influence that helps us seek out self-care? And then how do we know when self-care really feels caring?
That's such a great question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Juanita.
No, Andrea, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that, and I see we're chomping at the bit this one, because I think we've all experienced naming certain things as self-care that are in fact indulgences. And that the twain can meet sometimes. Like, so for instance, I know that sometimes ice cream at night is actually self-care for me. Regardless of the pound, it is just about finding space somewhere quiet in my house. I live with 4 other people. Finding some space for me to just enjoy something sweet at the end of the day. That's genuinely self-care for me. Eating ice cream all day, that might not be. But just touching a little bit on your last question, Juanika, about setting boundaries, I think really, as you mentioned, Alyson plays into this, because again, sometimes it's just about boundary setting, but it's also about sort of the basics that our body tells us what we need in a really real way. It's just a matter of how much are we going to fight. So one thing that I have found is an act of self-care for me is listening to my body. And if I feel tired, I lay down. no matter how much news I want to watch in the evening, as much as I'd like to go beyond that, at 12 o'clock hour on CNN, because there's just this one last thing that I want to learn about. If my body feels tired, I go to bed. And so that's one of the sort of basic ways that I tend to myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, as Andrea stated, my body does talk to me often. It took me years to learn to listen to my body. And I own that, and I give myself grace for not doing that earlier in life. But your body does speak to you in a number of ways. My body tells me when I need movement and when I've overdone that movement. And so for me, it is truly being connected mentally and physically with myself to know when I've overdone things. I also love sugar as well. Ice cream is one of my faves, but my body will tell me when I've had enough. And I've gotten to the point in life where I'm able to tune into that and not just mindlessly eat the ice cream. I've done the all day binge of ice cream eating. And then I'm just sick. I feel heavy. I'm extremely tired because the sugar rush is worn off. And so just truly being in tune with your body. I've had foot issues from running and walking extended amount of time because the anxiety in my body is built up. And so when we get to a place where we can be calm, which the pandemic has allowed for me, is to just truly tap into what my body needs, when it needs it, and how to fit those boundaries and limits in place, because the world has slowed down. And so I don't feel like I'm constantly running or jumping to the next thing. And let me throw this in here and say that self-care and jump into this next meeting. But really just taking that time just to slow the pace and truly be in tune with myself. And that's truly the best medicine that I could have gave myself.
Yeah, I'll echo what Juanika said. I think, a few years ago I was in grad school and working full time and had a 20-hour-a-week internship, and my body was like, this is not good. It's not good. And I give myself some grace as well, because it took me until then to realize you really have to listen to your body before it gets to that point. And you really have to pay attention to it and figure out what your body needs. And I think about self-care, I think you said it, Alyson, it can be like buzzwords. But for me, self-care at this point is more about healing. And so it's like a healing journey. And so one of the things I know my body needs is routine. And so I have to do the same thing. I have to go to bed around the same time every night, even though it might be a Friday or Saturday. I still have to go to bed the same time, and I wake up around the same time. And I generally eat the same sort of things, because I know when I go too far this way or too far that way, my body lets me know. And so I have to keep routines. That's really been helpful for me. And I know I'm addicted to potato chips, but I know I got to limit the potato chips. And so for me, definitely just thinking about healing, preserving my spirit. You talked a little bit about some boundaries and limits on watching the news or the comments and things like that. And I just kind of fill my timelines with like puppies and stuff like that. So I have a mixture, of the news, but then it's like, oh, here comes a puppy, that can kind of help me settle down and remember that I don't have to watch that all the time. Because I know for me, I really feel that saying that what you put in is what you're going to get out. And I really noticed that if I watch the news all day, I'm just going to feel yucky and I'm going to feel sad. And it's not good for me. And so I know I have to have balance and routine, and that really helps me.
I appreciate that, because I know self-care I used to associate with escapism. or avoidance, or something that I would grudgingly embark on to be like, well, I did a lot, I guess I should take care of myself. And so just the reminder from someone recently that sometimes self-care is allowing yourself that sigh, or just calling someone up and saying, hey, this day was real rough. Because I think we can sometimes connect self-care with productivity. Now that you have this time, you can clean your whole house, or you can do this whole diet regimen and lose 20 pounds in 60 days or something of that nature. And so just the permission to remember the correlation with self-love and self-care. So the relationship with yourself is really rooted in self-care. And so looking at it not as something that you need to fuel up on so you can do more of, but just to be present with what you're feeling and what you need. So
I'll
thanks,
say,
y'all.
can I get an amen? Yeah, okay.
Staying on the topic of self-care for just one more moment. One thing that came to mind for me, Shelly, is very much like you. I find that when I have a routine, I feel settled in my space. But also as Black women, I can see, especially as we move through COVID, one of the pieces of self-care that I've been exploring, and that I know a lot of Black women have been at this time, is trying something new and following through. So there, it's sort of the other side of the coin, I guess, so to speak, of self-care is sort of exploring what would it look like, as you mentioned, Shelly, to be in a different space that I've associated perhaps historically as one for white people, or this is meant for people who are older than me, or I'm not going to try that because I've not seen someone else who looks like me try that. There are so many resources right now. Of course, I'm thinking about Sister Circle, but all throughout our community and throughout the nation, there are so many resources for Black women. And it's that, and registration and interest is high, but it's that follow. And I think it's about, kind of stepping over that hump of trying something new. We know that to do the things that we are comfortable with is a safe place, a literal safe place for us. It can be detrimental to our physical selves to go into a neighborhood that we're not familiar with, or to drive a country road, which I've been pushing myself to do recently. I don't really have anywhere to go, but I just want to see the beautiful mountains here in Charlottesville, Virginia. So, but I find that my heart tends to skip a beat when I get so far away from my house. And my self-care has been, I'm going to drive a couple extra miles. And then I'm going to turn around when I see that second or third Confederate flag. And then I'm going to come on back to the house. But there's something that you're naming, Shelly, that I think is so important to self-care that you mentioned in our previous segment. And that is claiming space. This road belongs to me too. I pay the same taxes as everybody else that gets to travel this road, and kind of pushing ourselves a little bit can be in some ways. Thank you, Alyson, for indulging me.
Oh yeah.
We're with you. Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Trying new things and routine, as you said, they can come together. So I can try new things, but not after 9:30.
Exactly.
Right. And keyword new. So you don't have to be good at something, you're just trying. And so sometimes there's a lot of play just in being silly with it, getting it wrong a few times.
That part, yes. Come on, Alyson.
Yeah, and we just read a article recently about a woman talking about how play was her new self-care.
Yep.
Awesome. So are we ready for our next segment?
Yes.
We are.
We're going to talk a little bit about checking in, or sometimes wanting to check out, as it were. How can we stay checked in given all of the societal distractions calling for our attention right now? So specifically, how do we identify when we are beginning to check out? And what are some practical steps we can take to show up with grace and professionalism at work, and to follow through on commitments we make in our private lives? So how do we keep from checking out, please?
Still learning.
Yeah, jokingly, I was going to say, Andrea, yeah, show me. Tell me.
Find out, let me know.
Well, I will say spaces just like this is, like top priority for me, checking in. Just taking the kind of career component of that question. For those of us that are navigating work online right now, it can feel very much like an invasion of space to be on a Zoom call with folks who you wouldn't ordinarily invite to your home. You like them, you enjoy their company, but your home is your sanctuary in so many ways. So now that space is open. It's open for commentary. I hear it so often in various meetings that we might attend. And that is a new piece. And so I guess my question for the three of you being therapists, how do you continue to stay checked in and establish and maintain boundaries with this newfound invasion of space called Zoom?
I would say there's a few things. The first one is I know that I tend to fidget and get distracted. So I try to make sure that I limit the distractions around me when I am on Zoom. And the other thing that popped into my head as you were talking was when I'm in a space and I've noticed that I start to question, why am I here? That's when I know I'm starting to check out. And so what I do in those instances is remind myself and remember that I am here for a reason. And to just kind of, and this happens really fast, but to just kind of go over like, this is why I'm here. This is what I need to do. And again, just that reclaiming of the space. Because I've noticed that for myself, sometimes as maybe only the Black person on the screen or one of two on the screen, it can kind of feel like, what am I doing here? What are we talking about? And how do I play a role in what's happening? And so I noticed that I have to kind of talk to myself and talk about reclaiming that space and knowing that I do have a role in what's going on. I think I only answered the first part of your question.
Oh, that's quite all right. And the other piece was, how do we follow through on commitments in our private lives, and we can also consider our professional lives as well. But just in a general sense, how do you stay checked in?
I think,
oh
no, don't lose your thought. What you got?
I was gonna say it can be hard depending on what it is, right? And so I know that I have registered for a number of self-care things on the weekends that are personal, and I made it to a few of them. Not all. But I know that for me, it has to, again, be a recommitment to myself. The same as if it's something that's professional, right? And yes, you're expected to be there, but also to be present and to show up is, again, for me, what is this doing, not just for myself, but also why I'm here. And again, that advocacy again of how can I bring my voice that may be speaking for me or for Black women in this space. And just remember the importance of why I'm there and what I'm doing. Helps me stay checked in and present.
Yeah, I think for me, I write a lot more, like in meetings or to stay engaged, like questions I'd like to ask, like even if I don't have a question, I bring one up because I know for me, I have to be actively engaged in a meeting or in a discussion, or I am not. I'm a talker. And so I will not be present if I'm just kind of idly kind of looking off somewhere. And so sometimes having my little notebook for a meeting and literally putting October 13th at the top. Y'all, I've had to remind myself a few times, oh, it's Tuesday? Thought it was Wednesday. Okay. And so I'm being kind to myself to know that like my memory is impacted right now in terms of, you know, the circumstances that we're living in. And so if I'm being intentional with just taking notes or just kind of writing questions or even kind of saying sometimes on a notepad in front of me, using my environment, people can't really see my desk or what I'm doing. I've literally written one time, I'm really having a lot of trouble paying attention on the paper. I don't know why it made it more real, but then I was able to just kind of check in and say, okay, this is how I can remain present and write down the things I want to ask. I don't know how many times I've lost a thought in a Zoom meeting and been like, dang, where did that go? And so it's almost like kind of just putting tools around me that are going to keep me centered and grounded. So the advantage is with this box, I can use my space to my advantage. So if I know that there's going to be something that produces a lot of stress or a lot of distractions based on what comes up in a meeting or a session or whatnot, I'm carrying myself, just like how our office is intentionally designed to be comfortable. We got our tissue box, usually we got our clipboards, we know what to expect, just like the routine y'all were talking about. I need to know what to expect from my space and how it's going to serve me. If I need more light, if I need the windows open, just something that can make me just feel a little more grounded on the screen. And how do I stay accountable? For what I let other people know I signed up for it. Because then if 3-4 people are saying, Alyson, how was that thing? So usually I need more accountability now than ever for my own care. For work, you know, that's kind of, we got to live and survive. So that's incentive. But I have to kind of include my tribe in terms of making sure that I'm connecting to the resources that I need that are just for me.
Absolutely. So I too have to have accountability, partners, groups, tribe, social network to keep me engaged. Because I can check out real quick, right? 0 to 100 real quick. And so my accountability partners will randomly be like, Juanika, did you do this? I thought we were going to do this. You said, that's the famous line they use with me, is you said. I'm like, oh, all right, let's go. I'm going outside today. Yes. So that has definitely been something that has been extremely helpful for me. And like Shelly mentioned, those affirmations and just reminding myself that my voice is important and I deserve to be heard as well. Definitely keeps me coming back and advocating and really trying to figure out how to utilize my power for others who may not be in the room or in the same space that I am in. I do feel like that there's definitely a kinship and a bond, and I'll be completely transparent right now. Having this group of colleagues right here has been so encouraging and uplifting and feeding my soul. For so many years, I have not been able to work with, you know, another Black person. And it's just the energy and just the feeling and the emotions that come with being with someone of similar skin, similar experiences with you. Gets me up and ready to go to work every day. I don't know about nobody else, but I'd be like, they gonna be there. I gotta go to this meeting. I'm gonna see some faces today. So those are the things that really just keep me motivated and encouraged. And I do come from a place where, like Shelly mentioned, I have been like the only face of color. And for me, it was just, they're gonna get this Black Girl Magic. They're going to hear what my clients are saying, and they're going to understand that their policy and procedure may not be the best for everyone. And that's just the fire in my belly.
Thank you, Juanika, and I appreciate you bringing up policies and procedures, because as we think about Black women and this Zoom experience, and as we were talking about at the top of this conversation, what can sometimes feel like an invasion of space, I strongly encourage women to, reach out to your HR department. Get involved in developing policies for your agency or organization that you happen to work at, around, virtual guidelines. It may just be a matter of making sure that it's okay to have your camera off. So if your hair is wrapped up and you're not really trying to feel conversations about why, or you're not interested in hearing, did you cut your hair, or is it different? If that's just not what you need to move through that day, that you can be involved in policy changes at your place of business to ensure that the policies fit with your ability to do your best work. So speaking of our sisterhood here at the Women's Initiative, we have another member of the Black Staff Alliance who is not able to be with us today, but is deeply missed. Her name is Judy Curry-L. She is a psychologist, and at the Women's Initiative, she is a therapist for us and serves our clients beautifully. And she brings a question to this group that I think in some ways we may have touched on, and that is, what are some ways to increase our present moment awareness?
I would say for me, present moment awareness, just tuning into my body. Sometimes I might need to, just move my shoulders or, stretch or take a deep breath. I notice sometimes I'm doing that shallow breathing. So even just taking a deep breath. And I think this is something my daughter's school is doing, but they're giving the kids like scavenger hunts, and they ought to run through the house and find stuff and bring it back. But I'm just thinking about even standing up every now and then and just making sure that I'm just not sitting in front of a computer for really long periods of time, because that can definitely also have me checking out. So that present moment awareness, I just need to move, do something sensory. Sometimes I'll light a candle or incense or something to just help me, again, just brings me back to my body.
Thank you for that, Shelly. I think that as we talk about body awareness, it's really helpful to me to be around things that are bigger than me, physically bigger than me. When I go outside, it's not just about the sun on my face, the breeze across my skin, which does help me feel a little bit more aware in my body and away from the computer. It's also just taking a walk in the woods and being amongst trees. If you live in the city, then around buildings, there's something about looking up that just sort of reminds you that, the issues that we face now, as intense and traumatic as they may be, our ancestors suffered so much worse. And in those trees, many of which have been around since they were around, I find it grounding for me to just get outside.
Can I just add, I love that looking up. That really changes how you feel and what's going on. I know I just always kind of look up. That definitely changes your perspective, mood, everything. I'll be quiet and let y'all go.
Well, we could continue talking on, I'm sure,
Yes,
but I think you have a really key topic that we want to be able to address today.
Yeah. Well, so I'll just say, as we've been reflecting and talking about how we've managed ourselves through this pandemic, what do you think your children or the children in your lives have learned from you? What have you learned about your relationships with others? And what have you learned about yourself?
What a good question, Shelly. I have older children. They're one young adult and then two teens. And it's been interesting to navigate the pandemic in particular, but also everything that's going on in our country socially and politically, to be blunt. It's been interesting that, as a parent, but also just as an adult, I have the benefit of perspective, of bringing historical knowledge or perspective to a given situation, no matter how challenging it may be. I know that, just as we were just saying about our ancestors, I know that we can move through this. I know that there have been other pandemics and that we can move through this, and that we can be on the other side as adults, having experienced challenges in our lives and come out on the other side. Whereas with my kids, they don't have that perspective. They've not had this much happen all at once at any point in their lives. And so my challenge as mom has been, how do I offer perspective without being professorial, right? Also meeting them at sort of where they are. And so those walks in the woods that I talked about, they are often with me. Sometimes because they really want to be, and sometimes when they don't. But I know that their body needs that. I actually have found that through this, I've been inspired by them in ways that I don't know that I would have expected, given how they pivoted with, the academic setting is completely different now. College preparation is completely different now. And that they've just leaned into it. But also helping for them to name when things do feel too heavy, and checking in myself the need to not always paint that rosy picture of being on the other side, but also, just sort of recognizing we are wading through a really challenging time, and it's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to even be mad about it. It's okay to look at the television and see someone doing harm to someone who could easily be you and be terrified by that. As a mother, everything in me, every fiber says protect them, protect them, protect them. But a part of doing that is allowing them to fully immerse themselves in this experience, which includes some really sad thoughts and feelings, and giving them an outlet for them, whether it's writing, whether it's taking long walks or exercising, or whatever it is that is beneficial for them to move through it.
Yeah, I'll second that. So I'm not a mother. I am part of a village, and that I help and I co-parent and I assist with children in my immediate family and within the community. And so at the start of COVID, there were a lot of questions. And then when we had a lot of these acts of violence on our community, there were a lot of questions and, why is this so? And lending myself as that person just to be an ear. And then I just started doing, just like you said, Andrea, walks. And so we would do Saturday morning walks, or we would have racing competitions, which I always lost, but that's okay. But it was something just to get them engaged and active. And I didn't realize that I was setting the tone. And they would be like, are we going today? Are we doing this? It also lent this opportunity for themselves to express and be more vulnerable with me versus their parent or their caregiver. And just asking those questions of, well, what happens if, and how do I know? And so for me, I found those just to be some of my best moments. And then my younger little lovelies, they just want to know that they're safe and they're cared for. And so when he wants to check in or tell Aunt Juan a story or show me some new imaginary thing that he's created, just being very present in that moment and allowing him to express and live his version of his reality for right now. I think it's really important that, our younger kids know that they can still have a sense of normalcy within the home, whether it's imaginary play, whether it's family playtime. And we can interweave those things. We can interweave conversations. We can model, we can show them without it being too heavy or too much for that age group. And I feel like that has been a gift in itself, just to slow down that pace and truly allow the kids in our everyday life, like, to be kids. They're reclaiming their time too. You know, that pressure to excel in that class is not that present right now, because we need to check in and make sure that, you know, mentally, emotionally, that they're doing okay as well. I'm gonna stop talking because I can keep going too.
Yeah, but I have a lot of god babies. And I just spent some time with my friend's daughter, and we just drew each other pictures back and forth. And she was telling me all the things that she's afraid of, and you can tell parents had some concern, like, well, let's not talk about that. But I was like, fear tells a story. Tell me what story it's telling. And, you know, what story would you prefer to have? And so we just got to get really imaginative. So I guess my short and simple answer is I'm not great at drawing, but I was, but you know, it was just nice to do something that we weren't good at together, that didn't require too much thought or words. We can just draw and talk about the story that fear tells us. And so I just want, you know, children to know what they're feeling is not an inconvenience. Oftentimes I think they're kind of losing that sense of innocence, of feeling like they have to kind of grow up and understand really quickly, and just kind of letting them be present with all the feelings, whatever comes up, and that I can create space for that. So that's what I think about with the kids in my life.
Awesome. I think, you know, just to kind of, I don't know, second, third, fourth, everything you all have said. As a mother, I think for me, I'm trying to make sure that my daughter knows that you can still find joy in the middle of so much, and how you can do that and where you find it. And it's different for different people. And just really getting her involved and saying, what is it that you need? What do you want to do? You know, sometimes she's like, let's do this, let's do that. And I'm like, really? Again? But now I think through this, I'm like, yeah, we'll go do that. We'll go try that. Because yeah, her body needs it too. And she's learning how to express herself, and really just making sure that I also ask her, you know, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about what's going on? How is school going on Zoom? And just the importance of connection and family. So making sure, even though we can't be next to each other, we still see family every other Sunday on Zoom, or, you know, stretched in the parking lot. Somebody's at the end, one end, somebody's at the other. And just keeping connected to family and your tribe, as Juanika said, or your village, and how important that is, and what you can do to find joy in the middle of so much difficulty. So that is the end of this particular discussion. But again, we have had other discussions in the series. And thank you all for your insight, your wisdom, just giving us so many tools that have been helpful for you. And maybe they can be helpful for the people who are watching as well. And so as we've gone through this discussion, and we're going to close, and we also want people to know that they can look on our website at thewomen'sinitiative.org to find our other discussions and more tools on how you can heal and make space for your healing and thriving while Black. And we thank you so much. This again is part of the Community Healing Network's Community Healing Days, which are the third weekend of October every year. And we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.